Welcome to everybody. I'm so happy to see many faces that we know and some new faces. And I'm very happy to see that the Xenia series is developing with some wonderful speakers. And just to briefly sort of introduce, I wrote a couple of notes here for myself to introduce our wonderful speaker today. So we still struggle with the entrenched conventions of citation that follow the contours of the immense power, wealth, and violent masculinity of the empire. Such knowledge making is a colonial project, carefully guarded, often unwittingly, through language barriers, enormous costs of acquiring closed access publications, and by the researchers themselves or ourselves through the kinds of references that we turn towards to legitimize our work. So it was quite an exciting moment when a curious little blue manuscript, which I have here actually, a copy of my own, published in 2018, passed around the classroom of our SOAS summer school in Anthropology of Travel, Tourism, and Pilgramage, and eventually reached my hands. The title read, Plagie, copie, manipule, robe, reescriba este libro. Plagiarize, copy, manipulate, steal, rewrite this book. The author was given as No solamente Valeria Mata, not only Valeria Mata. The copyright statement was Ningún derecho reservado, no rights reserved. This was not only a wonderful and highly informed treatise on authenticity and plagiarism, but also an impeccably designed experiment in publishing with small interventions and insertions, always awaiting the reader around the corner of the page. It was a compact little piece of resistance, and I saw it as a lighthouse for the tired publishing protocols frightened of change, which many of us are co-opted into. Valeria Mata, our speaker today, is a social anthropologist and editor with degrees from the Complutense University in Madrid and the Metropolitan University in Mexico City. Last year, she was selected to carry out a curatorial residency at the Hao Art Museum in Shanghai. And the same year, she participated in the Anthropology of Travel, Tourism, and Pilgramage SOAS Summer School. Since 2015, she has directed the project Mueve, or Move, a roaming platform for independent publications from Latin America. How wonderful. And she organizes as well the book fair for independent editors and publishers, Otros Libros, Otras Formas, Other Books, Other Models, in Puebla, Mexico, where Valeria, as I understand, is right now. In recent years, her work has focused on interdisciplinary research, anthropology, and artistic practices. Now, Todo lo que se mueve, all that moves, Valeria's new book, fresh off the press, gives the same copyright notice, an indication of absolute hospitality in her text, no rights reserved. And like the previous one, it includes a reminder for us. Words and their possible combinations are collective property. So sharing this text is not a crime. It can be loaned, copied, and retouched as long as it is not done for profit and this note is maintained. It is better that a book travels than stays locked up in a box. Taking the cue from Deleuze and Guattari, Todo lo que se mueve is a triumphant endeavor to think history of the nomad, or as the nomad, the wanderer, the drifter, the migrant. Valeria's own travels reveal the entanglement of movement and stasis with gender, nation, empire, homes, and unhomely spaces of different kinds, with ruins, remnants, debris, imagination, and fleeting images, with silence. There is an unapologetic subtlety in Valeria's writing, of the kind that signals her carefully nurtured sensibility to appreciate the different worlds as she encounters them. The book is punctuated by haunting images of landscapes, etchings of passersby on cactus stems, artifacts exhibited in museums, people waiting in airport lounges. Now, I will not go any further into the subject matter as I'm very eager to hear Valeria's talk. But let me summarize by saying that Todo lo que se mueve, in my opinion, is a fine drawn tour de force. And it will be certainly valuable as an accompaniment to courses on travel, tourism, pilgrimage, migration, and mobility studies more generally. The book designed, and I'm happy to see that Pavel Zayas, who designed the book, is here with us. The book design is outstanding, and it makes this yet another of Valeria's books that is a kind of artwork that one wants to display prominently on one's bookshelf. Now, I will share a link. The book is available for the fantastic price of 15 euros at traficantes.net. I will share the link in the chat room. Please do go ahead and buy it. You will absolutely, certainly not regret buying it. Valeria, thank you so much for joining us. Your book, as far as I could understand it, and it's written in such a beautiful, poetic, subtle way that it translates, I think, across language. And for those people who are not fluent in Spanish, it encapsulates so much of what we want to do with the Xenia series. And it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to this celebration of yet another achievement in your publishing career. Thank you so much for joining us, and I give the microphone over to you.
Wow, Safed, I think this is the best introduction I've ever had, and I'm very moved and thankful with you. So hello everyone, and thank you so much for being here, watching and listening. Especially, I'd like to thank Safed and Jeff and Tom for lovingly organizing this book launch and for generously inviting me to be here sharing this with you. I'd also like to say that this is the first time I present the book. The first launch here in Mexico will be until November 6th. And also, this is the first time I talk about the book in English, so I was a little nervous because it has been a while since I don't speak in English in public. But also, I'm very excited and thankful to share some ideas with you and to have such wonderful interlocutors whom I admire very much and from whom I've learned a lot while I was in London in the last year in the summer school of Anthropology of Travel. So it's really an honor to be here. I'm going to start telling you a little about the book, and I'm also going to share my screen so you can see some pictures of the book while I'm talking. So I'll share my screen. Okay, so it's everyone seeing the, okay. So it's titled in Spanish. The title of the book is Todo lo que se mueve. This is a small video of the book. So yeah, the title of the book is Todo lo que se mueve, translated in English as All That Moves. Safed here gets the credit for this translation. And it is basically a set of explorations around some issues that have accompanied and interested me over the years. The meaning of the nomad, the different aspects of travel, roaming, wandering, the sense of belonging, etc. These immersions took different forms of writing that for me are like different ways of conversing with the world, like short essays, chronicles, notes, memoirs, journal entries, poems, and quotes from other authors. And the decision to bring these different writings together made it possible for me to approach these subjects holistically, not only from a theoretical or philosophical angle, but also from experience and affections. So I started from a very simple idea, which is that human and non-human beings like seeds, food, animals make continuous journeys through their lives. This is a picture of the journey of a banana from its origin in Ecuador to its final destination in Iceland. Or this floating coconut transported by water and with the ability to survive long journeys through the ocean until it reaches a coast. Or the paths of many migrants who have been forced to cross borders in dangerous conditions. Thus, everything is moving and changing, even though we sometimes don't notice. The continents we live in, the language, our genders, our own identity that we sometimes consider something stable is actually always moving. As Paul B. Preciado says, who is a transgender philosopher, the very thing of life is to be a constant transition. So a couple of years ago, I began to look over my notebooks and travel journals that have been piling up on my desk. And I noticed that I had been writing a lot, almost obsessively, about these ideas of movement, travel, roam, from different perspectives. And since then, I started to build and edit, with help from some editor friends, a set of text and images that I had been gathering through the years. So this book I am presenting today, published 2 months ago, as Safed said, was the result of that set of like fragmentary explorations. And through the book, I wonder about, and I also wonder around some questions, such as, can wandering become a tool for critical thinking? What is the critical potential of travel or nomadism? Understood not only as the act of traveling geographically, but rather of going beyond certain limits, misplacing some notions. According to the Caribbean poet Edouard de Glissant, the act of wandering is linked to the possibility of thinking outside the limits. He says, thoughts of displacement, which are also thoughts of ambiguity and uncertainty, preserve us from the systemic thoughts, their intolerance and their sectarianism. And also, I recovered the concept of nomadology, which Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari used, relating it to the idea of resistance. What these philosophers tell us is that if one of the fundamental tasks of the state is to mark the limits of the territory, to set borders, to set boundaries, and to appropriate the mobile dimension of people by subjecting it to rules that limit, control, and locate, then nomadism is presented as a force that opposes the norms that regulate circulation, insofar as the mobile tends to remain outside this control. So in relation to this idea, I want to show you the book covering. And when you unfold the covering, it turns into a poster that you can stick on the wall, like this. So it's a poster that. The front side is it has a picture of one of the first aircrafts with pressurized cabins from the 1930s. And then on the other side, the poster, it's a design with a phrase that can be translated as "everything that moves resists confinement." And the word confinement is encierro, is intentionally outside this box. And well, some friends have made interventions in some street walls with this poster in Puebla, here where I live. And another element that it's inside the book is this postcard of an airline meal from 1960 in the so-called golden age of travel from the 1950s to the 1980s, when flying was an experience reserved for a small group of people. And well, inside that astonishing machine, the journey was also the destination. So passengers used to receive as a souvenir a postcard with a picture of the plane or the food that was served on board. So, because if we think about it, airplanes not only lead to places, but they are places themselves, like destinations. So another important question I try to address in the book is who can be mobile, because as we know, traveling as movement through unknown social and geographical spaces has been more restricted for women or migrants. Over the years, the right of women to travel through certain places has been questioned or even punished, as this implies abandoning the most appropriate environments for women, such as home or family, even when home is sometimes a more insecure place for women than other places. So bodies in motion, especially those of migrants or women, have been represented as figures with negative attributes, or as threads that need to be straightened up and disciplined. Sometimes this lack of belonging or roots and belongings is monstrous for a society that condemns wandering life by building an ideal of stable settlement and fostering a terror of living without patrimony. There are some other questions in the book that I don't mean to answer there, actually, but to explore with dialogues and examples coming from the artistic field, literature, photography, poetry, and so on. And in that sense, I must say that this book is not an analysis or an explanation, but an immersion, an exploration, as I said before. And the book's pages do not follow a structured or linear sequence. In fact, they don't even have numbers. And using the analogy of the feminist philosopher Rosi Braidotti, each text that appears in the book is like a camp. It leaves an ephemeral trace in a landscape that is continually changing. In that sense, I like to call the text in this book portable writings, because most of them were actually written while I was on trips and transits. So they were not born from a moment of stillness or a pause that we normally associate with writing. Also, and to start like the conclusions, I'd like to say that for me, writing is very related to travel or movement in general, because I think they both imply abandoning oneself to an uncertain drift. They both are related to doubt, to wandering, in the sense of a movement, but also in the sense of failure. To write an essay, for example, is to rehearse, to make mistakes, to erase. It's very interesting that the word in Spanish for wandering is errancia. And this word has a double etymology, which comes from a cross between the Latin verbs iterare, which means to travel, and errare, that means to make a mistake. So errancia, and it's, yeah, making mistakes and also to wander. Therefore, I think that what is written is always provisional and incomplete. And in that sense, I think that everything I write is always open, unfinished. And I would like to finish this presentation with this quote from a manifesto made by a collective of artists, writers, and activists called Antenna. And well, you can read it, but it says, "The space of writing is a laboratory, a place to create unexpected combinations of like and unlike things and explore the results, a place to make attempts and embrace failures and extend investigations without regard to a clear sense of destination or outcome." So, well, I think that's all for me. Thank you so much for your interest and attention. I truly appreciate that I've had this opportunity to share these words and drifts with you. And well, also if anyone has any comments or questions, please feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you so much, Valeria. That was very inspiring on all levels. The video of you opening up the book and taking out the poster and putting that on the wall was something that, for me, has been very important in travel and thinking about travel for years. I think there's no better feeling of anticipation in any of the senses than holding a book and not knowing where that book is going to bring you and not knowing which adventures those are, if it's a travel book, if it's a anthropology book, if it's a novel, whatever, just having this world of opportunity and adventure in your hands. And certainly as travel has been slightly restricted, so to speak, for people due to the situation that's happening right now, we're finding ourselves traveling through others' words a lot more. And so what you're saying today is quadruply important and significant in all of this. I have a number of questions, as I'm sure everyone does. So if you have questions, please feel free to put those into the chat, or just let me know that you have a question, and then we can start with this. One of the incredible things about this this group, the Xenia group, is the conversations that happen in here. And I think this is a wonderful, wonderful place to start. Would anybody like to start so I don't hog all the question time? Great, Rupert. Rupert has a question there. Please go ahead, Rupert.
Jeff, thank you very much. And Valeria, that was really, really interesting. I'm really intrigued by the book. And as an outsider to this, I say to Jeff, I really need to do Anthropology 101. I suppose IR and history is more my background, but I really enjoyed it. But Valeria, I have a question for you, and perhaps more for the congregation as well. As you can see, and this is the great thing about video, I'm a white, late middle-aged, middle-class person. And when I was thinking about, and you inspired me to think about wandering and nomad, I suppose that there's no probably no doubt that it's much easier for someone like me to wander. I'm less likely to be harassed because of my color, perhaps, and maybe my age. My age also gives me money, and I have a background that enables me to be much easier to be a nomad and a wanderer than perhaps many other people. And I think, Safet, you alluded to this in your very good introduction. Is there therefore, as we think about Black Lives Matter, an issue here that in fact nomad and wandering and travel is actually a sort of, it's a sort of bastion of white privilege, if I could put it that way, that is very easy for someone like me to do and extremely difficult for many people who had been colonized or imperialized or simply don't live in the type of world that I do. And therefore, I come back to this privilege. Is there a way that we should look at this in terms of subaltern studies or in terms of imperialism and post-colonialism, that we could try and reverse this? And if we try to reverse it or to equalize it, how might we do that? Which is a rather complicated question. And I hope you don't need Google Translate, but do come back to me if I haven't made it clear. It's a sort of big theme. And I forgive me for the big theme because it's not very precise.
No, thank you, Robert. I think it's an awesome question. I think that I've been thinking about it actually, and through the book, there's an essay actually that touches this particular theme. I think that historically traveling, has been a privilege, as I said before, that in the golden age of traveling, only a few people could do this. And also in the travel books or history, the role of all the people that made possible the journeys of the colonizers and the travelers, normally white male, have been erased. The stories of these people that were not mobile, I don't know how to say, but like stable. The people that were receiving these people in the places where they arrived, or the people that were carrying the things of the travelers, and they were like sort of I don't know how to, like, erased of the story of traveling because they were not the proper white male right traveler. So I think that now we're all, and in the seminar of anthropology of travel and so on, are trying to contribute with other stories of movement, like migrations or the journeys of women that have always been traveling, but their stories haven't been told. So I think it's a long journey to decolonize this idea of travel, but I think we're on it, and we need to say it out loud. I mean, that travel is not is still a privilege. So yeah, that's what I would like to answer this like more deeply, but yeah, my words maybe are not. But yeah, it's thank you for the question. Thanks.
Xenia?
Actually, what Rupert has said is very true. And I would like to add one thing. It's not only the white Christian middle-class male, it's not only the white middle-class male, it's the white Christian middle-class male. Because if I look at the Middle East, the Eastern Mediterranean, most of the people who wrote about it had all the prejudices and all the misconceptions and all the expectations and all the imaginary of Christian white male middle class. to the detriment of the local populations. So I would like to add this, attribute of being Christian. Another thing is the way we talking about privileges, etc. Just look at the way visas are granted and how with one sweep, Trump in the United States decides to exclude Muslim countries, you know, the countrymen of Muslim countries to come to the United States with one sweep, just like that. So you know, it's a very complicated issue and raises a lot of questions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Actually, I'm trying to translate right now a extract from the book where I talk about this, but I'm doing it through the Google translator. So if you give me just 1 minute, I can do it and maybe read this so I can, but maybe if you have another question, we can, yeah.
Tom.
Just to follow, thank you, Jeff, to follow Christian, I suppose one would not like to exclude Jewish people from an interest in borders, boundaries, and so on. You're right to mention Islamic traditions of wandering, but I wanted to say that I have been reading for a discussion in a couple of weeks' time, which is about borders. And I've actually taken an inspiration, which I'm sure that Valeria would like to discuss with our Palestinian colleagues. The inspiration from Masai Ibrahim, which is Abraham's path. And I think that this extraordinary initiative, which operates through Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Israel, reconstructing the travels and wandering of not only Abraham, but also some of his descendants like Rachel and Jacob and so on. I mean, this initiative, it actually forces all of us, whether we are Christians, Jews, or Muslims, to actually look back to our very beginnings, our biblical beginnings in a way. And I suppose one could say that Abraham himself was one of the great wanderers that we know, one of the early ones. I mean, several millennia ago, and it's interesting to think not only Abraham but Rachel too. Came across this huge, quite a long distance in the Eastern Mediterranean, from what we call now the Persian Gulf to Canaan, and they are all telling us very strongly all about crossing boundaries, and I think the Hebrew for the Hebrew ivri is the root is avar, which means crossing, actually. So a lot of crossing is going on, as it were, with our patriarchs and matriarchs. And yet, of course, in the Eastern Mediterranean, you see the biggest collection of walls and checkpoints and obsession with state boundaries that you can find anywhere in the world, with the possible exception of the United States and Mexico in your area. And this is the direction in which we all seem to be going. I mean, this obsession with walls, and the idea that something called security is only achievable through walls and through, of course, arms sales and all these kind of things. But I think it is quite interesting to look back at the patriarchs and matriarchs, and I think that that this extraordinary Masai Ibrahim is very well worth including in your discussions about wandering.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I just translated a extract of the book where should I read it or, yeah? Okay. So just consider it's the Google Translator, so it might be some mistakes there. Sometimes we forget that the conditions of mobility are unequal and that the stories of migrants and political exiles do not speak with great enthusiasm of airports and borders as oases of not belonging. Because for them, the multicultural openness in our globalized era is not accompanied by structures and laws that guarantee social security while they migrate. The fact that tourists often visit countries from which immigrants are forced to live under adverse conditions is a striking contrast of our times. James Clifford says that unlike someone who is forced to move, the traveler by definition is someone who has the security and privilege of moving in a relatively unlimited way. However, the independence of the traveler has been in several ways a myth, since the movement of the mobile can depend entirely on the immobility and work of many others. As Europeans moved in colonial times to unknown places, their relative comfort was ensured by a well-developed infrastructure of guides, assistants, companions, suppliers, translators, porters, transporters, servants, and so on. So these actors suppressed in travel stories have been excluded in discourse. These characters have been denied the role of proper travelers because of their class and because they seem to be the ones who had a dependent status in relation to the supposed independence of the bourgeois individualist traveler. So it's a part of this discussion that I sort of addressed there, yeah. Safed, I think you need to.
Shall I just, okay. I was waiting for Jeff's cue. I was wondering, because you mentioned, I think somewhere towards the beginning, and perhaps then later on as well, sea nomads, or and I've sort of been looking slightly at nomadic Gurbeti Roma in the Balkans, whose paths were sort of cut off by the nation states after the breakup of Yugoslavia. And I was wondering whether you can perhaps reflect on nomadic relation to land. Perhaps somebody can correct me. I'm just wondering, whether nomads ever started a war, for example, and what are the sort of the particularities, perhaps, even in the kind of the ecological relationship, with the environment of humans and their environment, that is perhaps specific or interesting for to notice about different nomadic groups.
Yeah, it's like, wow, we need to make a research about that. I mean, like deeply. So the question is if what's the origin of if the nomadism origins are in like land or sea or?
No, I wasn't thinking so much about the origins, but the relationship to land or sea. Because this kind of settlement, and this kind of the claiming of the right and kind of a constant right over a particular land or sea is very much the way that not only settled communities but also nation states or empires and so on, the way they work, they sort of kind of whereas nomadic communities have this kind of temporality of relation.
Yeah, even in architecture, I think the invention of architecture obviously it's like an invention of the state. So the states look to make something settled to also to make this control of the population, and so the nomadic people tend to also build their places to live in a more ecological, if you want to say it, way, so they don't harm the land. So these like camps or the sea nomads that are always in this, they were forced actually to become, what's the contrary of nomadism in English?
Settled people.
Yeah, settled. They were forced to be settled, and they were not used to it because they only went to the land to bury their dead people or just to get some food. But it's interesting that this relation with time and your research about time, it's interesting in that sense. I mean, what's the difference in time between people that are always moving and the difference in time with people that are settled? Yeah, it's a time and nomadism. I think it's interesting too.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Christiane?
You know, if you think about the nomads in this part, in the east of the Mediterranean and further east, they didn't have a concept of ownership of the land. Wherever they settled, for as long as they were there, the minute they pitched their tents, it was theirs, and then they moved on to another location. And the only thing that remained of them was a pile of stones where they used to make the fire. So in pre-Islamic poetry and these famous epics of pre-Islam, they talk a lot about the stones that you find in the desert and that indicate that there was an encampment. And then somebody asked, Safet asked if the question if they did have wars. They did have wars, but it wasn't about ownership. They had wars about honor. They had wars about keeping faith. They had wars about exchanges of goods and so on, but it was never about territory. So it's a different kind of war. They did war a lot amongst tribes, but not over territory, over honor, over women, over goods that they traded with.
Yeah.
Yes, and also the concept of pilgramage nomads, temporary nomadicism for pilgrimage certainly has inspired plenty of conflict, as has migrational nomadicism, such as Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan, and that legacy moving from the east across over to the west. The way that the Visigoths moved on to Rome I would look at as some sort of nomadicism, because it was searching for an idea, but also not understanding where that place would be. And those certainly are examples of great conflict wherever they went. If you want to merge the land and the sea, the Western exploration by the Scandinavian countries that would be nomadic would settle long enough to reap the values or to reap the pillages of whatever places they come into. And then as soon as they bled an area dry, would then sort of have this necessary nomadicism. So I think it's important to contextualize that. But certainly, if we look at the contemporary nomads, the nomads that the digital nomads that move around the world, going from place to place to try to travel and to experience, but also trying to lay down some sort of employment routes as they do that. I think that's another interesting aspect of that as well. So this whole idea of nomadicism is pretty wonderful. And thank you for bringing that up.
Also, I was thinking about this phrase of Mircea Eliade that I love. It's he said, travel is the worst enemy of the feeling of ownership. So that's related to what you said, Christiane, that yeah, ownership is very related to the settlement, the land, the house, the essence of the identity. So this not only like nomads, but people that maybe they don't look forward to having a place of their own. You know, it's like travel as I said before, as a way of thinking outside this limits of house ownership, property. Yeah, it's.
And just as a footnote, in Arabic, the word honor and the word land are homonyms.
Oh,
So the land is ard and the honor is ard. So they're homonyms, and the saying is that a man's honor is in his land and the quantity of land he owns, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I think in Chinese, the character for, I have it in one essay of the book also, and I'm thinking when you said this, but the character of land, or I wasn't land, but like settle, was like a man carrying a piece of meat, like have, you know, like, so
Yeah.
it's interesting in a linguistic.
Tom, there you go.
Just to follow Christiane again, the business of wars, I suppose anthropologists are well versed in pastoralist societies also having mediators, and the whole issue of mediating between warring partners is very well developed, highly developed in nomadic societies. That's what we learn from people like Evans Pritchard and Yoan Lewis and other people like that.
I might ask a question that's slightly different in topic, but very pertinent to this this idea. As you were constructing your writing and choosing the path of self-published, because I think that for a lot of us, we're curious about this and how this goes. Can you describe that travel process of coming from the ideas of looking through your travel journals, of thinking about a banana in Iceland, and then saying, all right, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna get out here. And not only to self-publish, but your intentionality. Most people, when they self-publish, they're really looking to just get something bare bones out the door. But your book is so beautiful. The poster, the pictures throughout it is, surely you didn't do that as a way of economizing the process. Can you share a little bit of this creative process and whether there was a point where you thought maybe self-publish wasn't the way to go?
Sure. It's a long process. I think I really enjoy all the process of the design, choosing the typography, making the edition of all the papers, images. I think for me is to make like a composition. For me, writing and editing is to build something, to make a composition. I'm not creating something out of nowhere, but I'm choosing to, I'm choosing things to compose a piece. And I really like that. The images that I've been gathering, I put them on my wall. So I have this relation with these images, that which one I want to choose, which one will get out. And my notebook, I made a lot of transcriptions from these notebooks. So the act of moving this text from my notebooks to the computer was also part of the process to familiarize with what I've been reading before. And I have many friends whom I admire a lot that are independent editors here in Mexico, because as Safed said at the beginning, I was working with this platform for independent publishers for some years. So I know people that know how to do things very, very nice. So people that are they do corrections to the test, are good friends of mine. We made a lot of reunions with Zoom to check out the text, to read together. So for me, the act of publishing is to, as the manifesto said, it's like a laboratory to share ideas with others. It's not like just to create a product and then put it into the market, but to create like resonances, is that the word? Like echoes between people. And for me, this space with you guys, it's another resonance for the book. So the book is always completing. It's like an open process. So I enjoy that very much. And if I did this with a commercial editorial, it wouldn't be the same, I think. I couldn't, for example, liberate the book. So it had to have the copyright and the author law and everything. And so self-publishing, it permits me to do these things, like this crazy stuff that I couldn't do if I do it with an editorial or with an editor. So, and I enjoy the process of designing, to choose the papers, to go and to the imprenta. I don't know how to say this word. To the press. I was next to the machines where the book was printed. So this process, it's something I really enjoy, and for me makes the book something more special. So yeah, it's longer, I think, the process, than if you just make the manuscript and send it to some editor and then they pay you nothing. I think it's the things that you received as an author, it's like nothing. So I think it, contrary to what people think, self-publishing, it's even economically better. So I can pay my friends that help me to do this in a better way than if an editor, all the editorials here in Mexico that are huge are known because they pay nothing to their collaborators. So I think it's 100% what I'll be still doing with materials of my own and friends. Yeah, long answer. Answer.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more question. If anyone has one, Rupert, and then Luke.
Thanks, Jeff. Valeria, could I ask you another question? Your book is quite clearly incredibly interesting and full of positivism and the future. And I want to just talk about the future, or ask you about it. Is there a sense when you've finished your book that it's a sort of fin de siècle, as the French might say, that because of COVID and because of borders, which you've mentioned, and because of difficulties and self and other ecological damage, climate change, that the sort of travel that you're thinking about so positively is over? That in fact, in many ways, for all of us who can travel as a discretionary activity, the sort of moment has passed. Would it be better if now we in fact all stayed at home? Is it too expensive and too damaging in all sorts of ways to continue to travel, to satisfy ourselves, when in fact what's probably best for the global community is to stop traveling? You can see I'm a worried man sitting here in London, but I wonder what you thought about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's something I don't. I think I'm not. I need more like to write down the words I think, because traveling, it's ecologically damaging also, right? So I don't know. I have many words in Spanish. I don't know how to translate right now, but it's really stimulating, the question. I mean, if I don't answer right now, please know that I'll be thinking about your question. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Luke. Did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand go up there. No? Okay. No.
But I could.
Yes, please.
Well, I guess I'm just interested by your current geographic location in Puebla. I'm thinking about my favorite food that comes from Puebla.
Really?
Al pastor, and the nomadic tradition that led to its creation of immigrants from the Levant showing up in that area of Mexico. continuing the nomadic shepherding traditions of where they came from, and creating this dish of basically shawarma, but adapted to the Mexican palate that has become so popular in Mexico and in the US. I'm curious if in your research and putting together this book, food and food traditions like that, and particularly ones from Puebla, since it's such a locus of that sort of, interesting food history related to movement and immigration and nomadism, if any of those ideas kind of were circulating for you.
Well, I mean, we definitely need to talk later, because I think for me, food, and it's like the other obsession I have.
How could it not, from
anthropology of food? Actually, when I was trying to get into SOAS, I saw this Masters of Anthropology of Food, and I was like, wow. And I think there's a very special link and association between food and movement, and food and migrations, and how food is constantly changing and enriching when it moves. And also I was very interested in the book. I don't it doesn't appear, but the food that travelers are always carrying. For example, I made a workshop with migrants here in Puebla, in a little town 4 hours away from here. And we were talking about the food they put on their backpacks when they cross the desert from Mexico to United States. And it was awesome how they were absolutely creative with what they carry. Because of they couldn't bring much weight in their backpacks, so they made like small bottles of water with the flour we used to make tortillas, and put like all the flour in the bottle of water, so it's like, I don't know, 100 of tortillas there, so it's really like vigorizing. And so I was thinking about how food is also always traveling and moving with people, and how it's transforming. But obviously is something I really like to go deep in. So if you're interested in those things too, we definitely need to would converse. Thank you Luke.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Valeria. That was very inspiring for all of us on all the levels that we've mentioned. Thank you for taking the time to join us from Pueblo. Excellent. Thank you, Stafford, for your wonderful introductions, and thank you to all of you for participating and for your questions. And it's nice to see some of you again who I haven't seen for a while. Very curious about what some of you are up to. Our next Xenia series will be on the 19th of November. That's a Thursday, I believe. And then our December series is scheduled for the 17th of December. So we're starting to plan out now 1, 2, 3, even 4 months in advance. We'll send you all emails with recordings of this, and we encourage you to share with others. One of the nice things about having a group of this size is we can all see each other. And while the messaging that we are interested in reaching more people with these ideas, that will be a wonderful day. But for now, I really like being able to see everybody. It feels shockingly social at the moment. So I like that. Thank you all for participating. And Safed again can paste the link of how you can access this book and how you can steal this book and pass this book around. I love that spirit. Reminds me of recordings of a band known as the Grateful Dead that also felt the same way, that once the music and the words were out there, they were done with it and it was ours to share, so long as there wasn't profit on behalf of somebody else. What a wonderful opportunity. And thank you very much to you all. And thank you, Valeria, for your wonderful words. And
Everyone.
Thanks, Valeria. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks all.
Thank you.